What happened at your work which caused multiple people to all quit at once? The boss went off on a tirade on me for something that wasn't my fault, and I got him to scream people like you are expendable pieces in this company and I can replace you tomorrow if I wanted to. 80% of the engineers quit the next day. Simply didn't show up, including me. From what I know, the entire project folded because my now ex-boss couldn't find people to replace us because no one wanted to do the kind of work he was looking for at the salary he was paying. I had worked at a grocery store for about 3 years before moving from courtesy clerk, basically bagger plus custodian, to helper clerk, stoker. The grocery department wanted to save costs on personnel, but couldn't fire anyone or lay anyone off due to the union. So they started cutting back hours and literally told us, when someone quits, everyone else will get more hours. We were supposed to be 40-hour employees, and they had us at 32 hours. 2 people quit, and we were down to 24 hours. A third person quit, down to 16 hours. I don't know what their plan was, but they didn't give us more hours as people left. They decided after 6 years it was time to do a drug test. Even lost the CEO in that great idea. Cancelled all raises and bonuses for everyone except the CEO, his wife, financial and hours, and his son. Utterly useless it, in a year, where we have record profits, and brought in almost double the clients on top of announcing they aren't looking to hire more people, when we were already overwhelmed. Good part about it was when the majority of us quit they lost almost every single client shortly afterwards to their competitors and the company is now defunct. Word slipped out that the whole accounting department was being replaced, so they all resigned all at once. We stopped providing free coffee, and we are so cheap that we sold our coffee maker. This was in Seattle, so a couple of people bought their own coffee makers to put in their cubes. That tripped the breakers several times, so it was very disruptive since our computers would shut down. Management then said no coffee allowed in the office at all. We lost 4 very good engineers. Tattoo shop owner, who lived in another state, hired some asshole to come back revamp the shop. I had been managing for 3 years at this point and he just expected me to teach him how to do my job so he could replace me. That guy had no clue how to run a shop. Plus the owner had been embezzling money for her coke habit and had blamed the longest standing artist at the shop for lost revenue. Accused him of stealing. I did the books. No one was stealing. She was nuts. Anyway, all the artists and I mutinied and left at the same time. Fucked them over good. With that idiot at the helm the shop didn't last a year after we all left. Many years ago in high school I worked at a movie theater. The place was pretty poorly run from the moment I started there. We never got paid on time and management was basically a bunch of lazy jackasses who sat in the office talking all day and never actually did any managing. It would have been hard for things to have gotten any worse, but after a couple of months they brought in new management who seemed to want to make it their personal mission to run the theater as poorly as possible. They first decided to implement a new policy requiring all projectionists to wear ties, despite the fact that projectionists are never seen by the public, not to mention that tiny little detail that the projectionists worked around giant, rapidly spinning objects that a tie could get caught in. Management refused to reconsider the policy, and every single projectionist quit as a result. They then decided that the door people, of which I was one, who were always scheduled 7 days a week, would now only be scheduled on the weekends, and refused to reassign any of us to concessions on the weekdays, so we wouldn't lose hours. As a result, almost every single door person quit, including me. After that they started imposing impossible cleanliness standards on concessions, things like requiring them to scrape popcorn kernels out of the cracks in the trim behind the popcorn machines. Concessions was there until 5 AM every night trying to meet their standards. Most of the concession people quit as a result. By my count the theater went from a staff of about 50 to a staff of about 12 in 3 weeks. I swung by about a month after I quit and found out that entire management staff had been fired and replaced yet again by an entirely new one. Ones who actually seemed to be running the theater properly. My best guess is that the previous management had been told to whip the theater into shape and they were idiots who had no idea how to effectively do that. When I was 16, I worked in the concession stand at a minor league baseball stadium. Minimum wage at the time was $5. 15/hours. This job paid $8 and it was always in the evenings, so it was perfect work for a high school student. The only bad thing was our management was terrible. The main manager would throw toddler tantrums about once a shift over stupid bullshit, like not ordering enough of a specific beer, she did the ordering, or running out of pre-cut lemons for tea. One night the stadium was running a promotion, and it was incredibly busy, easily 2-3x the normal volume of customers. We were all working our asses off handling multiple roles each with absolutely no downtime. Although we all cleaned as we worked, nobody had a chance to do thorough cleaning for the whole shift because of the never-ending horde of hungry baseball fans. The manager showed up 3 to 4 hours late per usual and throws the biggest fucking tantrum ever over the unswept floor. Finally, she announces, "Listen up you lazy fucks. Minimal work gets minimal pay. Everybody is being paid minimum wage tonight because you slobs won't clean up anything." Both of our bartenders in the bar back quit on the spot, which caused a chain reaction. We all took off our aprons and hats to leave. She blocked the exit and was red in the face from screaming, so one of the cooks climbed out of one of the big serving windows where we served customers, so I did the same and most of the staff followed. Bear in mind that this all happened in front of like 200 plus customers. Of course, my final paycheck got lost, so I had to file a wage theft complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission. Promised a bonus at the end of the year. Told everyone they will not be giving out bonuses due to the low company performance. Company had a successful year. Boss was in the middle of building a multi-million-dollar home. Brother-in-law manager just bought a nice home that year. I quit on the spot. Many others quit soon after. Oh boy. I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings for a few years as a line cook. 2 different stores, same fucking pay. It was a type of work where you ask for a raise and they scoff and say yeah, me too. Anyways, I had been pretty dead set on quitting sooner or later. Our kitchen was very small. Most people ended up closing 4 to 5 days a week with doubles on the weekends, while still attending school full time as it was a college town. On Super Bowl fucking Sunday, a useless coworker who ducked out in the bathroom most the shift finally stops showing, and in response the managerial staff delegated closing to my pal Jay. Dude was a fucking delight to be around, hands down the best coworker ever. Jay had told them that due to being a full-time student, he no longer wanted to be first and last out, 4 PM to 12 AM, 1 AM on the weekends. They basically told him to go fuck himself and that they don't have any more shifts for him. Immediately, me and one other cook walked to the office and quit on the spot. Buffalo Wild Wings lost 4 cooks on Super Bowl Sunday, leaving them with 7 full-time students on the schedule. It was a managerial shit show. I was hired by the new owners to replace the existing manager. I was under the impression that he was moving on to another job somewhere. So after about 4 days I ask him where he's headed and if he's excited. He just looks blankly at me and says, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm just training you as the assistant manager, right?" The look I gave him must have been a great tip-off because he got up and walked into one of the new owner's offices. After about 30 seconds they were screaming at each other. Then he just storms out of the office, grabs his stuff, give me the finger, and leaves. Over the next few days I'm trying to calm things with the employees. They are not faulting me, but now have a very bad taste in their mouths about the new ownership. Over about a 7 to 10 day time period my team shrank from 15 people down to 3. I hobbled along with that the best I could while we tried to hire new people, but the new owners were offering so little we had trouble finding people. After 3 months or so of that I started to get fed up and overwhelmed, and when the owners started to get on me about missed deadlines I had it. We were still only at 5 people, 2 of which were brand new and still training. They didn't allow me to refuse work or push deadlines out. They expected the same output as a 15-person team. So after my third day in a row of being berated for missing a deadline that was impossible to make, I quit. They laid off half the company with no warning. This included a gentleman who was less than a year from retirement and had been there for 35 plus years. The company was shocked when half the remaining people abandoned ship shortly thereafter. Worked at a Wendy's, and one of the regional managers started running a store because they couldn't/wouldn't find new managers to replace the old ones. Well, anyways, this guy practically ran the place into the ground. Before he started running the store, most everyone liked working there as it was a good environment. A few months after, a couple of people quit because of him. And one day I roll in at 9 to help open the store, and he comes out to my car as soon as I park. I was 15 minutes early and usually just sat in my car until 9, and tells me, hey, I need to start early because the 3 openers just quit on me. We managed to get the store open and had a number of people from other stores help run the place until the people from the next shift came in. A couple days later I hear the full story of what happened from a coworker. The regional manager is supposed to be at the store at 7 or so, and the opener's 30 minutes later. He didn't actually show up until 8:30. So when the openers, already pissed at being at work really early and not being on the clock, saw the regional manager roll in and knew it was gonna be an awful shift, all decided that they were done with him and just quit right there. So at least 6 people quit because of him by the time I left the place. Probably more left after me. I did landscape construction. The cheap ass owner kept taking bigger and bigger projects while never hiring more help. We were all overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious as hell. One of our foremen quit, and I followed suit a few days later. 2 more guys quit the next day. He was down to 3 guys for the obscene amount of work he wanted to do. Of course everything gets way behind schedule, but he's convinced it's not his fault at all. He went out of business less than a year later. I was working for a very large company. Before the tech bubble burst, we had a meeting with our new director and the VP. They were tired of people complaining about things that should be changed at the job and how they managed people. So they sat around 200 of us down in our auditorium, and the director said she didn't want to hear any more complaints on how she was running things, and if we didn't like them there was the door, and that there was no way we'd leave such a great job. Well, there was a mass exodus, and probably close to 50 people left within 2 months. She and the VP were reorged and given 0 reports. They were gone after a round of layoffs happened shortly after. Owners retired. They were literally the greatest people, both very sweet, but kept the place running like a well-oiled machine. They took pretty good care of us and their restaurant. When they left, they gave the restaurant over to their nephew, who at the time was a busboy/waiter, kind of standoffish, didn't really interact with us too much, a bit lazy at times, but for the most part did his shit and went home. He seemed okay. Until he got the power of being the owner. He fired 4 people, including 2 of the 4 cooks and 2 of the 3 dishwashers, literally that same day, on a Friday night just before the dinner rush, all because he "didn't like their attitude." He refused to allow people to take vacation that they'd already requested and gotten confirmed by the original owners, would change the schedule randomly without telling anyone, and then scream at people when they missed a shift or came in late because of it. He'd refuse to replenish the kitchen until we were literally already out of things, then take forever to put in the orders. He showed up randomly and would drink at the bar, for free of course, because he was the owner, and then bring in all his buddies to drink with him. Together they'd get way out of hand and grab at women and try to start fights. Within the first month of him being the owner, over half the staff had quit, usually walking out literally in the middle of their shifts. After being screamed at, they'd basically throw down their aprons and tell everyone else that they were so sorry, but they couldn't do it anymore. After the last cook, this big dude who usually kept the kitchen laughing and running at a decent pace, started crying in the middle of his shift and dropped everything he was doing after the boss came and yelled at him for being too slow and making slop, then walked out. The rest of us just bailed along with him. 4 months later the place was closed. His aunt and uncle were absolutely furious and devastated that he'd run the business they'd built up for over 30 years into the ground. don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.